and what we've been doing is then enabling members to buy the wines and then do the tasting on their own when they have time.
Right.
So if you want us to do that, we can do that. If you record it, we'll take it and we'll put it on the site.
I recorded you asking me to record this. So,
okay. Awesome.
Maybe, yeah, and thanks for prompting me to that. When I brought in the wine today, Michael suggested I do that. So thanks for reminding me. So we are recording, and yeah, that was one thing we're going to do, because I'm going to leave the private page open so that somebody who couldn't have made it today can have a chance to go through it, just like you said. So
great, good.
Well, again, thanks for having me. You know, I'd just like to start off. I'm Steve Tonella, by the way, owner, proprietor, vineyard manager. I don't know, everything you can imagine with the winery. We're a very small production winery, and I come from I'm fourth generation from Rutherford, Napa Valley, which is the absolute center of Napa Valley. So it's right here. This is the center of Napa, the dead center of Napa Valley on the west side. So the west side of Highway 29. So you're looking west there. There's a little church there on our road, and we've been blessed to. I've been blessed to have come from there and have a heritage of wine growing. And I always say the favorite parts of what I do of the wine business is everything up until harvest, and then opening the bottle, because I think those are the two most important aspects of wine and the wine industry, because everything else is details. If I can do everything right up into the harvest, then the winemaker, myself, or somebody who I work with, they're like at the 90-yard line and they just take it in for a touchdown, right? I think in difficult years, you need more of the chemistry aspect, but in good years, if I do everything right in the vineyard, then it's just the wine takes its natural course from the vineyard to the bottle. And with everything going on in this world, and wherever I've presented the wines, and I've done this on 3 different continents. Well, I would say from Rutherford to 3 different continents. So, Hong Kong, London, and Barcelona, Spain. So, and everywhere else in between in the U.S. And I just noticed whatever culture or background that people come from, wine, food, people, it brings people together. So I really appreciate, the opportunity to present. And what I noticed, and I'd like to make this interactive. So, please feel free to fire away questions and anything about the wine business, the current state of affairs, anything, feel free to make this interactive. So, what I'd like to do is just kind of go into a quick background of S.R. Tonella Cellars, link in the stories and the history with the wines, and go through the wines and make it interactive. So if everybody's okay with that, I'll just maybe kick it off. And basically my wine here, I'm 4th generation from Rutherford, Napa Valley. Rutherford is, the dead center of Napa Valley, and it gets the most ambient sunlight. So it's really ideal for Bordeaux varietals. And my great uncle, who is here, his name was Joseph Ponti, and he came over from northern Italy to Rutherford in 1907, early 1907. And he was, he was reading a paper. It was Corriere di Milano in northern Italy, and there was an advertisement for workers to come over and help rebuild San Francisco after the great earthquake of 1906. And so, the prospects were prospects and adventure. Like, I'm sure the story has been told many times, but he came from northern Italy to San Francisco. He didn't like San Francisco very much. He had an uncle in Rutherford. So he took the train when they had the train, and it actually transported people. The ferry to Vallejo, and then Vallejo to Rutherford. He was having lunch, I think his first day there, and he met somebody named George de Latour. And George de Latour was the original owner of Beaulieu Vineyards. which has been consistently operating since the year 1900. And so he went out and met him. My great uncle spoke good French, and George Latour did speak very good English, so they hit it off right away. And long story short, he stayed at Beaulieu for 43 years. And in those days, you really had to wear many hats. So he did the hiring. He was a foreman in the vineyards. He was the first official winemaker or known winemaker at Beaulieu. And he did some bookkeeping as well. So they did kind of everything. He stayed there for 43 years. And, he really started the history of Beaulieu, the current history of Beaulieu, I should say. And I don't know if we should be celebrating this, but it is the 100-year anniversary of the start of Prohibition. Going back historically, in the United States, but specifically Napa Valley, Prohibition decimated the wine industry, the beer industry, and spawned, bathtub gin and a lot of bootlegging. But the thing that Beaulieu had was a good relationship with the church and the diocese in San Francisco, and they made sacramental wine. And so, contrary to the trend, I think there was 5 wineries in Napa Valley 100 years ago, and Beaulieu was the one, and it's been continuously operating since 1900. And they made sacramental wine for the church. And I think at one point they had maybe 75 or 80% of the market share of sacramental wine in the United States. And actually the congregation numbers went up during that period. And it was good, strong sacramental wine. So I think there's a lot of jokes and stories about bootlegging through the church in those times. But, it's a story of kind of survival and growth. The last thing I'll say about that era was Joseph Ponti. He made the first internationally recognized Cabernet Sauvignon from Napa Valley. It was a 1936 Beaulieu Cabernet Sauvignon, and they didn't have really international tastings at the time, but where it gained recognition was at the 1939 Golden Gate International Exposition, and that was kind of celebrate the completion of the Golden Gate Bridge. It was at Treasure Island, so it got all the awards there, and it got shown all over the world, and that was the first wine that gained that international recognition for Napa Valley Cabernet. Before it just kind of blended into a lot of different things. So that's a significant milestone. It's really not published too much or known widely. So, it's a nice piece of history and recognition for Rutherford and Napa Valley. So just coming into present, my operation's 10 years old. Joseph Ponti acquired vineyards. It's currently known, he bought them with George Latour, and there's a vineyard called George III, which is quite known in Napa Valley, and he bought that with George Latour, and it's right next to it now, and passed it on through the generations. And so I'm kind of the first of my family to actually make the wine under our own name. And again, I started 10 years ago. It seems like a lifetime ago, but I started with a couple hundred cases and have grown quite a bit, and really pleased to be able to share the wine. I don't have any really marketing budget or distribution. Most of it's private acquisition, and I'm mostly in California, Texas, Florida, Hong Kong, and London, as well as Japan. So not a normal footprint, but it's where I've personally shown the wine. And I say I present the wine. I don't say I sell the wine. So it means something for people to be introduced to the wine with the owner proprietor, and I've really enjoyed that aspect of it. So that's a little bit of the background. And again, as you know, I focus mostly on Bordeaux varietals, mostly Sauvignon Blanc and Cabernet. So it's been really good. And the advantage that we have is just, if it's not our own estate fruit, we've known growers for generations, so we can kind of put our arms around the vineyards and control the viticulture and the quality. So I'm really pleased with that. And maybe now we should taste the wines. So I think most all of you, I think everyone acquired the Sauvignon Blanc. And so if you have that in your glass, it's 2019, and it is a particular clone of Sauvignon Blanc from native to Bordeaux. It's clone 1. It's what you would find, I think the best known winery that is known for clone 1 is a winery called Chateau de Chem. It's a Grand Cru, or it's the highest rating classification, Grand Cru Superior. And I think that the most economical bottle is about $145, $150. So, and it goes up to the Sauternes, which is the white Bordeaux that goes for $600 or $700. But the Clone 1 Bordeaux is really, you know, I really like the cleanness, the freshness. It has a lot of the citric aspects of Sauvignon Blanc. Because we're in a warmer climate, we don't get as much of the grassiness or the greenness that you get in some maybe cooler climate Sauvignon Blancs. So it's meant to have the citric aspect to it, the you know, the floral notes, and with the warmer climates, you get more mature fruit profiles. Sometimes you can pick up, you know, lychee or white peach. Somebody from Georgia said it tasted like white peach, and it just happened to be in the tasting notes that we said white peach. So I don't know if we were good or lucky, but it does have those particular aspects to it. You can kind of get a little bit of that on the nose. We do vinify this in stainless steel, but also some French oak and acacia, very light toast. So it's more meant for the texture versus on the palate. So it just gives it a little bit of weight to it, a little bit of creaminess. And it's really just, I call it a New World Bordeaux. So it's the world of Sauvignon Blanc is quite vast, and I think it's a great variety. And I hope we can preserve this in Napa Valley, because, you know, predominantly people are planting Cabernet, and I'm trying to advocate for diversity in Napa Valley so we can really enjoy all these different types of wines. Yeah, the farming costs are the same, so people obviously, you know, gravitate towards Cabernet.
And Steve, what are the differences between the two, the reserve Sauvignon Blanc and the non-reserve?
I like the way you said that. Most people say regular Sauvignon Blanc and the reserve Sauvignon Blanc. So the Napa Valley Sauvignon Blanc, which we're tasting now, are just presented. It's 100% Sauvignon Blanc, and like I said, it's 80% stainless steel and about 20% French oak and acacia. The acacia grows in the same forest as French oak. It's just a little bit tighter grained, so it imparts less tannins. So it just makes it really fresh. And the reserve Sauvignon Blanc is 85% Sauvignon Blanc and 15% organic Semillon from Rutherford.
Okay, I get it.
And we age that, so you get a little bit more weight to it, a little bit more viscosity to it, because we do vinify that all in 100% new French oak. And it's really, I call it neutral French oak, but that's not technically correct. It's actually the lightest toasted French oak, and again, it's for textural components versus on the palate. So I really love to keep the purity of the fruit and the purity of the wine, but I think the oak just adds that creaminess, that texture. You know, we stir it in the barrels, and that adds to the creaminess. The Semillon really adds to the weight of the wine as well. So, you know, those are the main differences which you may pick up. I mean, I'm just looking at them in the glass, and the colors are not that much different. So it's more on the taste profiles that you can really notice the difference. Any comments or questions on the Napa Valley Sauvignon Blanc, the first wine?
How new is the oak?
It's about 20% new.
We also talked about the farming costs for the Sauvignon Blanc and Cabernet Sauvignon being the same. Are the yields per acre the same? And you know, what are the yields for Sauvignon Blanc?
Well, that's a real excellent question. So the yields, to be profitable, you need to be a little bit higher in Sauvignon Blanc. So with Cabernet, the yield per acre average is maybe 4 tons. If you get to Sauvignon Blanc, you really can maintain quality and get a little over 5 or 5+ and charge for it. And then you have the qualitative aspects you're really looking for. The average price last year of Cabernet per ton, it was $7,400 in Napa Valley. And so 1 ton, more or less, will make about 50 cases of wine. So with Sauvignon Blanc, for quality Sauvignon Blanc, you're looking at 3,000 a ton, so less than half. So you really need to have good ground to be able to grow and to cultivate the Sauvignon Blanc. And what you're seeing in some areas is people planting Cabernet where it shouldn't be planted, where the heavier soils are, where it's closer to the river. You know, there's higher water retention, more clay and silt versus on the Rutherford bench side, with this picture here, it's very gravelly, well drained. So it's porous soil. The roots have to go deeper. It's a little bit more stress on the vines, which arguably make a more complex wine, and it's ideal for Bordeaux Cabernet Sauvignon.
Yeah, I really like this Sauvignon Blanc. It's I'm not a huge fan of California Sauvignon Blancs in general. I tend to like French version better.
Right.
And this is delicious. I really like it.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think I always say the world of wine is vast, and it's so great for the consumer, enthusiast, or professional. You just have this world of wine, and there's so many different styles, different climates, different characteristics. So it's really, I would say at your Vintners evening, and I wanted to mention this because I've been to the last 2 Vintners evenings, and I would say I've tried more wine at your Vintners evening than I have at home. So it's really a pleasure to go around and taste everybody else's wine and see what they're doing, and it is my one chance to kind of get out of my house, so to speak, and try everybody else's wine. So I really enjoy it. So I'm sorry it didn't happen this year, but look forward to the future Vintners evenings.
Are you sourcing fruit from the same vineyards year after year, or do you kind of move around?
I endeavor to with the growers that we have, everything. I endeavor to have long-term contracts, and I've been mostly successful with that. So for the record, these Sauvignon Blancs, both of them come from Rutherford and Oakville, which is heavy in the cab land. So we really want to put our arms around the Sauvignon Blanc vineyards that produce really high quality Sauvignon Blanc, and we can manage the viticultural process and make sure that the fruit develops as it should to get the result in the glass.
Yeah. So
actually the vineyard that we source this from in Oakville is actually right behind Opus One, if you can believe it. It's right. It's the next
Pepe.
vineyard. Yeah.
Isn't that Bob Pepe's old area right around there?
Yeah, it was. It's been changed out quite a bit. So it was Swanson was the owner, and then it got sold to Quintessa, and so they pulled some of that out. So it's really a bit of a shame, but we've got our little section of the vineyard that's intact. So very fortunate.
Yeah.
So I know maybe not everybody has a reserve Sauvignon Blanc, so if you do have it, that's awesome. If you don't, I'll just describe it because it's basically in comparison to the previous. It just has a little bit more weight, a little bit more texture, a little bit more viscosity. So again, both are very food friendly. My clients all over love it, but clients in Japan really love it. you know, a lot in terms of pairing. I think this really goes well with, you know, any, you know, chicken, fish, raw preparations such as sushi, ceviche, anything crudo, pasta with white sauce. So it's really a nice refresher with anything kind of rich as well. Crudités, all that good stuff. So this really just has a little bit more weight to it, a little bit more creaminess, and you get a little bit more of the, yeah, probably just the weight from the Semillon, which is a really nice grape that's really not vinified as much in Napa Valley. I think it's less than 1%. So next time I see you folks, I will bring out my Reserve Semillon, which is from 2018. I've only shown that wine once, and I think I'm going to break it out next spring. So, you know, please be advised or watch the space. I'm really excited about it. And if you notice the Sauvignon Blanc, a lot of people will say, hey, I thought this was a red wine, but it's in a dark bottle. And, you know, most people talk about ageability of red wines. How long will this age? And I like to talk about how long will the Sauvignon Blanc age? Because I think it really has good ageability. You know, it's ready when I think it's ready to drink, but I also recognize that it's really going to mature. It's going to integrate, you know, it's going to develop and soften. And so I think this Sauvignon Blanc could age, you know, 3 to 6 to 8 years. And I'm really, you know, really excited about it.
17.
You know, I really just, I put this wine out there. It's for Sauvignon Blanc, it's $60. So it's quite expensive. And I'm quite sensitive to that. And I want to be price friendly. But it's just a matter of people trying it. If you didn't know, nobody knows, most people don't know the brand. They say, what is this, a $60? But when you try it, you know, that's where the connection happens. And so I'm really, really happy to introduce this to folks and my club members. And, you know, incidentally, a really quick story is, you know, I don't really sell too much to restaurant retail, maybe about 10%. But I spoke to a restaurant called the French Laundry, and, you know, they said, oh, could you please drop off a sample of this? And I thought to myself, well, I have a rule that I don't drop off samples. I present the wine because I don't like to just leave it because it ends up in a pile. But, you know, it's a French Laundry, 3-star Michelin. So I said, okay, I'll drop you off a sample. So anyway, they put this wine, the Reserve Sauvignon Blanc, on their tasting menu, along with the Cabernet and the Bordeaux. So it was really nice recognition. And I really like that restaurants, you know, like and acquire the wines on a limited basis because, you know, wine is meant to go with food. So it was really nice kind of accolade or recognition, I think, for what it's worth. Has anybody here been to the French Laundry?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so I've lived there. Everyone here?
So,
Except me.
Several times.
Except me. And I've lived less than 5 miles away from the French Laundry my whole life, and I've never been. So it's on my list. It's on my list.
Yeah, it's worth it. I haven't been in a long time.
It sounds like your Reserve is more like a white Bordeaux.
It's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Semillon.
Loved.
It's a New World White Bordeaux. And, you know, again, I reference Chateau de Chem because it's really the pinnacle of this clone Sauvignon Blanc. So it is Sauvignon Blanc and Semillon. They may incorporate, and I think it's maybe with the Sauternes, they may incorporate a little bit of the Muscat clone, which is the Muscat clone, which I don't have in my wines, is a little more, has a honey characteristics, it has sweet characteristics, which I don't like in my wines. I want to say something that's better than I don't like, but I don't think they fit the profile of the style of Sauvignon Blanc that we're going for. So
Steve, I was interested in, you know, when we got the wines and saw, oh, there's a Sauvignon Blanc that's twice as much as, you know, the other Sauvignon Blanc, and I thought, is it going to be twice as good? And I can tell you, it's better than twice as good.
Thank you very much.
It's worth it. And for those of you who don't have it, I would highly recommend it. It's just adding that Sauvignon to it. It just rounds it out really nicely.
Right.
You know, and I guess the way that I would characterize it is that the first Sauvignon Blanc that we had, I think probably has a lot of range from a sunny afternoon to just hanging out to, you know, having with a meal easily. But the Reserve is certainly an elegant wine, and you would not drink it just sitting by a pool. It wants some food. It wants, you know, it wants a spread.
Right.
It's a very elegant wine.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a good description. Yeah. And again, I think it's just a matter of trying it, because if you never try the wine and you don't know what you're in for, it's not something like Opus One or Camus that you'd say, okay, I know what I'm going to get here. So it's fun. This is a fun part, you know, right? Introducing the wines to folks and having them try it. And it's a magical moment.
Okay, Steve, total aside, but I have to ask, did you grow up with Rich Salvestrin?
I know who he is, and I think he's a bit older than I am, but I know him, and yeah, he's worked with family members, and
Yeah.
I bought some of his wine actually. He's probably one of the only people I've ever bought wine from, and I bought his I think it was his 3D wine, 100% Cabernet All Estate, and yeah, it was fabulous. So yeah, I know their family, and we have something
third generation.
Yeah, and I met his father and mother, and his whole family's
Nice.
great, and we have something in Napa Valley called the Festa Italia, and so they're one of the Italian families, multi-generational Italian family from Napa.
Nice.
So yeah, he's a great guy.
All right, good. Yeah.
So I'm looking for my Cabernet glass. There we go. So I let this open up a little while. So this, oops, I need to adjust that. So this Cabernet is basically our estate Cabernet. We only make about 500 cases of this, depending on the vintage, but on average, about 500 cases. The vineyard is all managed by hand. So that means we don't have tractors or industrial equipment, machinery. And I would say less than 5% of Napa Valley vineyards are managed by hand. It's mostly hillside and areas where you can't get modern machinery in, or there's a very steep angle. But that allows us to manage the health and the vigor of each vine. So anything from pruning to canopy management to nutrients, we can have a thoughtful approach to each vine. And they're trained in vertical cordon style. And what that means is the fruit zone is vertical. A lot of times you'll see these chorus line of trellises that they have two arms, and all the shoots go up and down, and it lends itself to mechanical management. But we do everything by hand, and so that just gives us a better relationship with each vine and the fruit. So these clones are kind of rare Bordeaux clones. They're mostly, in Bordeaux. They're very rarely, I've only heard of one or two other vineyards that have these clones, and they're just a couple of numbers. It's 412 and 685, but what they're really known for is their small berry size and natural extraction and phenolics from the skins. All the reports on these up until recently were in French, so and they were protected, so I couldn't copy and paste to translate. So I had to read all the trials in French. But that was kind of the summary. Is basically, a lot of fine tannins, which you'll notice from Rutherford as well. Is the tannin structure is very fine, and a lot of good natural extraction and phenolics from the skin. So if you hold this against something white, you'll see very deep light. Usually doesn't penetrate it outside of the edges. So it's 100% Cabernet, all estate, and we age this in French oak, varying degrees, but mostly about 70-75% French oak, new, and the rest is neutral, for 18 months. So I think anything longer than 18 months, you oxidize the wine in ways you don't want to. It's just my style. I like to get in the bottle and let it rest. You get everything, you get all the extraction and the profiles you need after 18 months. And so, I just bottle it and lay it down 3 to 5 years. And I'm not a corporation. So, people ask me, when are your release dates? And my answer is, when the wine's ready. So I just taste it. Some years I've actually released a newer vintage or an older vintage before newer vintage. And it's just, everything is really vintage specific and when it's ready. So like 2011, I released after the 2013s as an example. So it's just when the wine is ready. Every vintage is different. And I want my wines to reflect the vintage and celebrate the vintage and be authentic in that way.
So we actually started with your 2014, which we had in the cellar, and it's showing so beautifully right now, incredibly integrated with really nice cherry coming through, and it has this spice component on the backbone. It's really pretty.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that. I sold so much of it, I barely have anything left. So I'm happy to see when people bring it out. That was one of my favorite vintages.
Yeah, it's really pretty.
It's fabulous. And I really, with my 10th year now, I'm going to release some libraries, in October, but it's great to hear that because I've been just focusing on the 17. So I usually let the wine do the talking, but I'd love to hear what your comments are on the 17 Cabernet and what you pick up on, what you like. Or does it leave you? It can leave you speechless. That's fine too.
It more left me with an empty glass, so I need to refill.
And I love to see the Corvins too. I realize with these, virtual tastings that it's sometimes it's hard to open up a full bottle. So I did the Corvin as well on every wine except the first one, which is more of a daily welcome home wine for me, for lack of a better term.
It's delicious.
Yeah, it's really something. I mean, this also has that same elegance, and that's obviously your style, right? I mean, it's really nice. They're well integrated, still great fruit on it, but certainly the depth and the complexity. The texture is just outstanding.
Thank you.
It is very smooth, but I'm not getting complexity.
Yeah. Lots of great fruit going on there. I'm getting on the back a few sort of reduced notes or something. Is that from the skins or the barrels, or what are you working with there? It's a little bit more than I would expect sometimes from a Cabernet. It's something almost Syrah-like, but
yeah, this kind of drives me crazy because when I open it up, I'm like, did that taste the same as yesterday? And sometimes it depends when you open it up. It'll evolve, and I don't decant. As a rule, I don't decant, but I'm not a sommelier. I don't play one in any form, but I just like to let it open up in the glass, and I find that it kind of evolves in the glass. I think sometimes it's a product of it depends when you open it. At first, it could be a little bit tight. It could have a little reduction. The aromas could be muted. The texture could be a little muted, but I aerate like this versus anything else. And I just find that just kind of evolves the wine and kind of releases the profile with oxygenation. But I don't get too much reductive. I just see it kind of opening up and evolving. But I hear what you're saying.
What did you say you were doing for oak on this one? It
complements it. It's almost peppery at the back, but it's just a little bit different than I think is typical in a Napa Cabernet.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all the fruit is wonderful. It screams Rutherford.
Yeah. Yeah,
plum.
it's I get this a lot, that it's just a different style, because it's not a recipe winemaking. It's not trying to be consistent. It's just trying to respect the vintage, and produce the best that the vintage offers us. So I like the I think they're siblings. The vintages are siblings. They're not exact, but they're related. And I think I get a lot of that from the the clones. And again, if I do everything right up until the harvest, then it's just like, let it take its course, right? And that's what I endeavor to do. But Peggy, to your question, it's about 70% new French oak.
Mm-hmm.
And I always go for medium toast, or an average of medium toast, no real heavy toast, just enough to impart that, what I call the spice rack, into the wine, and the tannin structure from the barrels. There's a lot of tannins from the skins as well, because of the berry size. So I like to be quite restrained in the oak program.
So nice. After having the 14, you can see where 17 is going, but still feels really young compared.
Yeah.
It's going to age beautifully.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I wasn't expecting the 14 on here, so I'm glad we have that reference. That's a good reminder.
Peggy, next time you have to share.
I wish I could. Believe me, I would love to have an in-person event.
She is.
Yeah, I'm sharing with him. He has to ask what he can take out of the cellar.
Next time, I hope we're around the same table, or on a boat or something, or
Yeah.
I think the fruit is really nice on this.
Thank you.
Really nice. I think it is very well integrated. I am enjoying it.
Thank you very much.
And I'm sure it's going to be much better even in a couple of years.
Yeah, I love
Although we're going to drink this tonight with our steak.
It's like you drink one. I like to drink it one bottle a month and just see how it evolves. And it's always a lot of times before release, I just drink it and see how it's like a child growing up. And then the next question people ask me is, hey, what's your favorite child? And
No.
everybody has a favorite child. I'm like, no, I like them all for different reasons.
Yeah. I agree.
So, last but not least, and I think maybe Justin is only the owner of the Bordeaux style blend. So this is something I started. This is the second bottling. This is 2017. And I actually made this wine for about 8 years. And it was basically research and development. So I tested, over 30 different vineyards, different clones, different oak programs. And I really just wanted to find what I thought was a pinnacle of each variety. So I start with the 5, noble red Bordeaux varietals. And I produce wine out of them. And each year it's just the best of the year and the best of each Bordeaux varietal. So no 2 years will be the same. It will be the best blend of the vintage. So, this wine is predominantly Cabernet from Rutherford, Cabernet Franc from Oakville Bench, so the west side of Oakville. When I say bench, that means it's basically rocky, gravelly soil that has been the parent material of the hillsides, which wash down, and it's hillside Malbec from Stag's Leap, and you're never quite sure what the last blend. So I think we have 1% or 0.5% of Petit Verdot in there, and the way I blend is obviously starting with the 5 red varietals, and then blending session where you can kind of get close to the first 80%. For me, that's very easy. You can kind of get a blend that says, okay, I'm 80% there. And then evolving to the next 15%. That's harder. And for me, the absolute thing where I torture myself and others is the last 5%. That's where the last kind of few percentages really, you arrive at some sort of an aha moment. And, you know, it's kind of a cruel process or I don't know what to say, a cruel mistress or whatever you want to say. It's a bit of a torture, but once you get to the right blend, it's kind of like that aha moment. And so, you know, that's the goal of this, is to really celebrate red Bordeaux varietals, to welcome, you know, and embrace that complexity that blend brings versus a straight Cabernet. And yeah, basically a new world red proprietary varietal that will change every year.
How long does it take you to do the blending? I mean, how many different days do you go through iterations before you settle on the blend, or you just do a marathon on a single day?
No, I don't do a marathon because literally I have to walk away. If I don't walk away, I go crazy, and it just, I have to walk away. So the first 80%, you know, that's the first day. The next 15% is a couple more blending sessions. The last 5%, that could be a couple weeks. So I blend, I think it's good. I take it home. I don't like it, or there's some tweak that needs to be happening. All these notes, write all these notes, go back, blend again. So the last 5%, you know, takes, you know, at least a couple weeks, if not a month, depending on how things are kind of aging and evolving, because we're vinifying 5 different varieties separately. So it's really you know, it should be a symphony, but I have to make it a symphony somehow, and I can't force it, right? So I have to let the wine speak, and I have to let the wine evolve, and you know, really just, it takes that amount of time, and you know, it's a pleasurable experience when it's done, and actually when I'm doing it, but it's just a bit of a torture, in a kind of a good way. It's kind of, you know, it makes me think, and the wine's speaking, and the wine's evolving, and you know, so it takes a couple months to blend it overall. But it's the last 5%.
Outstanding wine.
Yeah, I really.
What was the first vintage that you made of this?
It's 2016.
I'm not doing that.
Okay, because I mean, this needs like 10 years, 20 years,
yeah,
maybe more. I mean, this is really, it's got everything that it needs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good now, don't get me wrong, but I can imagine this with, you know, substantial time on it. I mean, the complexity, the richness, the acid tannin balance is great now, but it's only going to get better over time. The finish is outstanding. You know, it's interesting, again, like I always come back to the consumer side, like, you know, is this worth, you know, 30% more than the other wine? And no question, but it's a different wine. This wine, you know, I wouldn't want to drink tonight with a steak. I'd want to get a case of it and forget about it for a decade and come back to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really good feedback, because I think, again, I try to release, I do release when I think it's ready to drink, but it's definitely does well to cellar it. People ask me how long it will last. And my answer, you know, I don't know, because I haven't been I can't go forward 25 years, but you know, if I had to guess, it'd be at least, you know, 25 years if cellared correctly. I do want to point out that I use the same corks for every wine. It's the same grade cork. It comes from the island of Sardinia, Italian island of Sardinia, which is not the highest producing area for corks. It's mainly Spain and Portugal. But this comes from Sardinia. It's a family-owned, multi-generational, family-owned cork supplier called Ganot, which doesn't sound too Italian, but we test every cork for cork taint, so TCA tested. So again, because I'm not a name brand, and because everything kind of rides on that first impression, I think in general, a lot of, you know, business, social, you want to get a good first impression, right? So my ethos is basically, I never want my first impression to be a corked wine. And so we TCA test these. It adds quite a substantial cost to the wine and the production, but you know, what's the cost of losing a customer forever? So that's kind of, you know, again, the ethos, and, you know, a little TLC we put into every bottle. And you know, people say, whoa, you have red wine corks on your white wines? And I say, well, we treat every wine the same in terms of the qualitative goals that we go for. So,
Steve, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
When you were Justin's wife, Alexandra, when you were, growing up and becoming a winemaker, who was your favorite winemaker that you just said, this guy makes this wine, because you are an incredible winemaker, and I'm just wondering who your mental mentors or
yeah.
what you have in your database in your brain for creating these wines.
Yeah, no, thanks. That's a really good question, because first of all, I'll just say I was child labor. So I started working in the vineyards when I was 6 years old, doing little things. We used to irrigate by moving pipes. So I did a lot of that, and canopy management and things like that. So I was child labor. I was free, and it was great. I won't take anything back, because you're in the sun, you're in agriculture, which I think is about 3% of the U.S. workforce today. So I really, really enjoyed it. But and I'll come to your question, but scent memory is very powerful, right? So I always remember the crush, the fermentation, putting my head in tanks when I was really young. Wine was always on the table. So obviously I always had a little taste. And so my first impressions of wine were Beaulieu, BV, and they really made, I would say, the closest to old world style, unmanipulated style. The private reserve. They own most of all they're owned by a big corporation today, but back then they, at least the wines that I tried were made with, respecting the vineyard and things like that. So my great uncle, I had a chance to try a few of his wines, which have all but evaporated these days. And then, Andrei Shalashov was he's a pretty well-known winemaker in Napa Valley in the world. And he came from Russia by way of France. And his wines really had a big influence on me as well. So I would say those two, and those are going back quite a few years. And a lot of it goes back to this area in Rutherford here, the Rutherford bench. So I would say those are probably some of the winemakers I've really admired, and have kind of given me the procedure, modus operandi to really pay attention. It's all those 100 passes you do in the vineyard, 1,000 passes you do in the vineyard up into the harvest that really make the wine. And to shorten that, wine is made in the vineyard, and that's kind of what I take in my approach to wine and winemaking. And it's a bit of an old world style, and so I really kind of respect that, and that's what I kind of go for. And I think my great uncle Joseph Ponte, the few wines I try to his, and Andrei Shalashov, I think those wines from BV kind of really shaped my my sensory and my palate and the way I approach viticulture.
Excellent. Thank you.
Interesting, totally different focus. How has COVID affected you and your business, and now all this smoke? What are your thoughts, your concerns? What keeps you up at night?
Yeah, I think with COVID, I don't have any brick and mortar establishment. So, I don't have a production facility. I do what's called custom crush. So I basically rent out a part of another facility. So for me, I don't have those kind of costs and, direct consumers coming to visit, but, that is a big component. My wine sales have, increased about 44% year over year. So I think that's quite good. I think as COVID continues, it goes from, fear to frustration to a little bit of fatigue. But again, wine helps with that. So people are enjoying wine a bit more. I think that's quite good. And so I think it's a little bit tough on the industry, and I think it's people coming to Napa Valley has kind of gone down. But I think I'm starting to see an upswing on that. And I'll send this out post meeting to Peggy and team that I do kind of outdoor tastings at a place that has, it's called the Charter Oak Restaurant in St. Helena. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's owned by a 3-star Michelin chef, Christopher Costa, who is the head chef at the Meadowood in Napa Valley. And we do kind of an outside tasting on their terrace. And I've noticed a kind of a pickup of that kind of outdoor tasting. So I think overall, to answer your question, wine sales are quite good. We need to adapt and we need to go outside. And I think that fatigue is hopefully going to reinvigorate in terms of people want to get out, and safety protocols will be enough to have people visit. So that's kind of my story regarding that. Regarding the current situation with kind of the smoke and the fires, it's really going to be a tough year. I can't put a marketing spin on it. We've had a month of some degree of smoke. The hillside and where there's been dense smoke, hopefully crop insurance is going to cover most of that. A lot of growers don't have crop insurance, so it's going to be a really tough year. Valley floor, I think it's going to be okay, and I think there's going to be some good quality wines. And I think for the consumer, it's going to be great, because I think the perception and maybe the fear is the media is really going to critique negatively the vintage. I think those reputable producers who do put out wine under their own namesake or their own premium labels are going to produce really good wine. And so the consumer is going to benefit because the price is going to be somewhat reduced. So I feel really bad for the growers that don't have crop insurance or don't have an outlet for it. But I do think there's going to be really good wine that's going to be made. There's just going to be less of it. And then there's going to be, if you go to Trader Joe's or Costco, you're going to be flooded with wine that's going to be, $20 or less from Napa Valley or whatever the price point is. That is going to be decent wine. And some people, hey, you go to Trader Joe's, you buy something for, $20, you're going to love that profile, right? And so a lot of people are going to kind of like that. And if you didn't tell people, they probably won't know there was any sort of issue, right? But I think with the fine wine and the more educated or fine wine enthusiast or professional, you're going to have a problem with it. So, that's kind of where we're at, and it's going to be a tough year for some folks, myself included, with the fine wine, because I'm simply not going to put out a wine that has some sort of a, for lack of a better term, some sort of a defect, and so I will produce vastly less or none of the 2020 vintage. It's a hard message to deliver, but it's for me, it's the right thing to do. I think with larger operations, they maybe have second labels, or the bulk wine market will flourish with wines that are $25 or less, or a lot of rosé, right? Because the smoke will not penetrate the they get on the skins and they get integrated into the anatomy of the grape. But a lot of white wines will be great. A lot of rosés will be great. I think some of the Cabernets and red wines will be, I don't want to say compromised. I don't think they'll be put out as premium production. It'll be more of a, lower price point.
Are you still getting a lot of smoke up there?
I think, I was at St. Francis Yacht Club today, and I saw the low layer of fog in the Golden Gate Bridge. It was beautiful. I took a couple of pictures. And so it was kind of blue, and I would say that's the same thing as it is here. I think in the morning it's a little bit clear. Today's been the best day in the last month, but you do see a little bit of a haze. So the quality is getting better, but the air quality is still what it is, but it's getting better.
Just a quick follow-up on your discussion about TCA taint. What percentage of corks flunk the test and get rejected?
This is I asked my cork supplier this as well. So it's generally 1 to 3%. And then, in that 1 to 3%, there's various levels. Where it's really sensitive is white wines, and that's why before I used to have a twist top to my my Sauvignon Blanc, and that's why I didn't do it. But and that's why to put a cork into Sauvignon Blanc or white wines, they're very sensitive. So that's why I put it in the Sauvignon Blanc. And Cabernet, a little less sensitive, but it's always to a degree. And again, with age, you don't want to open up, hey, I've been saving this wine for 10 years, right? Like Justin was talking about, you know, you're saving this, you want to savor it. And TC, it kind of grows. And you never want that to happen, right? It's a waste of 10 years and money and time. So, you know, generally industry is 1 to 3%. So I think we're at the top of the hour. I'm happy to hang out as long as you guys want, but I just like to say I appreciate this, you know, wine's bringing us together, and you know, hope to do it in person sometime soon.
There's no question, Steve. We want to have you in person when we open up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and have a nice wine dinner. I think that it'd be fabulous to get all of us together over dinner
That's a great
at
idea.
the club and have these wines with food and expand our group a little bit here.
I would love that. I would say also that for, you know, I do, in restaurant terms, I do stuff off the menu. So a lot of times I have wines that I don't publish or I don't promote, and you would not know it if you didn't know me. And so I always like to bring out something that's kind of special. You know, we're recording this, but whatever. I'm doing like kind of a reserve Cabernet.
An advertisement for the upcoming dinner. After the club reopens.
I already talked about the Semillon. So, you know, there's things that I kind of produce, kind of very small production, and only to, you know, folks like yourselves. So I would welcome the opportunity to meet with you again and present the wines and
Terrific.
have a really good time and enjoy each other's company with some great wine.
Outstanding. And Steve will have the opportunity then to also plan our menu. So from a pairing perspective, I think, you know, we can put the right things together to really showcase the wines. I think that'd be fabulous. I love food as much as I love wine.
Yeah, you and I both. You and I both.
Yeah.
Well,
They're meant to be
awesome.
together.
Yeah.
Steve, this was great. It was nice getting to know your wine background too.
Yeah, no, thanks so much. I think that's kind of important, and sometimes we can go straight to the wines, but I always like to tell kind of the story behind the wines and kind of weave in and out of, you know, the stories and references and you know, keep that rich history alive and, you know, in the glass and the bottle and our conversation. So, you know, really appreciate being able to present to you, and I hope we can do it again. And I'm gonna count that we do it again. It's just a matter of when.
Exactly.
Steve, thank you.
Thank you
We
so
really-
much.
Thank you very much. It was great.
We really enjoyed learning about your
Cheers.
Seeing all of you guys too. Yeah.
Yay. See you soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was
Bye-bye.
great.
Take care.
Loved your wines.
Thank you so much.
Bye.